And then please keep your microphones muted for the time being because it can be very distracting to our other participants. Videos are encouraged to be off as well, as that helps with our broadband bandwidth connection, I should say. And also, please do not ask questions with specific student information. That PII, personal identifiable information, we don't want to include that in any of the public-facing chat. We can certainly work individually or using a secure help ticket to discuss those secure pieces of information. I'm beginning with the helpful resources. These are truly, oops, I have an old conference link. These are truly helpful. And so please reference these. And again, I'm sending you the slide deck so that you'll have that. Again, I'm going to be presenting today. So let's get that recording started. If I can get my Teams tool to cooperate, we're going to start recording.
I think Heidi started it for you, Carrie.
Oh, Heidi, thank you. All right, so we are going to be discussing with one of our fabulous colleagues today, the WiseSecure application. And so the learning targets today for WiseSecure is we are going to discuss grant access to applications, and we're also going to be discussing school directory and PI 1207. These are tasks that you will need to have completed, clicks that you need to have done, so get excited. With that, let's begin WiseSecure. Jeff Perry.
Good morning, I'm Jeff Perry. I'm on the customer services team along with Carrie, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about WiseSecure. And what WiseSecure is a security tool that allows schools to assign personnel user roles to use the various DPI WISE applications. And the system is designed to be flexible because we know that not every school is the same size, has the same workflow, has the same number of personnel to complete all the tasks. So the system was created with flexibility in mind to allow you to set up the workflow, to set up the access to these tools in the way that works best for your school. And this is a three-tiered process, or I think of it kind of as a pyramid. With level 1, level 2, and level 3. And we'll talk about that. At the top of the pyramid is what we call the District Security Administrator, or the DSA. And this is the individual, probably the choice administrator. In most cases, that is the case. The individual who is in charge of making sure that all data privacy and data governance bases are covered. There is and we'll look at this in a moment, but there is a data privacy sign-off that person completes. And then that person is basically in charge of the secure data for the school. Now, the DSA can be very hands-on and be involved in every step of this process I'm about to describe, or can be hands-off and delegate those functions to other people, or have a combination of that. And that's that flexibility that I was talking about before. So we try to make it as flexible as possible. So the DSA, the person at the top, that person, when they're assigned as the in the DSA role, they also get assigned a user role to all of the different WISE applications. And they also have the ability to assign user roles for those applications to any personnel at the school. The second level in our pyramid is what we call an application administrator. And this exists if the DSA wants to delegate some of that authority for assigning user roles to school personnel to another individual or several other individuals if they'd like to. So each of the DPI applications, and you're going to learn about many of them here today, like you'll hear names like WISE Data Portal, WISE ID, WISE Admin Portal, things like that. Each of those WISE applications has the ability to have an application administrator assigned to it. And that application administrator doesn't have the user role to use that application. What they have is the ability to assign user roles users to use that application. And that brings us to then the third level of the pyramid, the bottom of the pyramid, which is the application user, the end user who's going to log into the app and actually do the work. So through this three-tiered system, we believe we've come up with a pretty flexible way to let schools develop their workflow in the way that works best for them. So you can have all of the functionality, kind of centered among one or two or three people if you'd like, or you can spread that out over any number of personnel and do kind of anything in between. So whatever works best for your school, you can set it up the way that you want to do it. On the next slide, we have a link to the District Security Administrator or DSA request form. So we would ask that the choice administrator, if you have not already, and I know many of you have, and that's wonderful, if you have not already completed that DSA request form, that you do that and get your school set up with the DSA, as that is kind of one of the very first basic steps that needs to be done in the whole WISE process. If you, at that time that you're completing the form, would like to designate someone to be a delegate DSA, you may do that. What do I mean by a delegate DSA? If you want to delegate some of that authority to another individual, you can do that. So if you want to have more than one DSA at your school, you can do that. If you want to have, maybe there's a principal and a vice principal situation, or however your school is set up. If you want to have sort of like two people at the top of that pyramid, you can do that. And there's a place on the form for you to indicate that delegate DSA. You do not have to do that. You can definitely just have the choice administrator set up as the one DSA, and that is perfectly fine to do as well. We have an example of what the DSA request form looks like, and we'll show you how to get there too here coming up. But basically, when you click on the link to get to the form, you're going to need to log into the form with a WAMS ID and password, and we're going to talk about that in a moment as well, and click on the button for a new request. Once you do that, you're going to see that screen that's on the left of our example here. And you put in, so your personal information, that section is going to pretty much all be filled in based on the information that's in your WAMS profile. And then where it says district information, the example here is filled out with Madison Metropolitan as an example, but don't choose the district that your school is located within. The very first choice on that drop down is going to be private school. Please choose the private school option at the top. Then another drop down is going to appear when you choose the private school option, and it's going to have a list of all the private schools, and you can just choose your school from the list. And that's the best way to do that. So just thought I'd throw that tip out there to you. And then the description that's in there in the example is just perfect. You don't have to write a whole lot in there, but it does make you write something. It's a required field, so you have to put something in there. But the very brief example that's noted there is perfect for you to follow. As long as you put something in there, the system will let you move on with the form. Next, we're going to talk about WAMS. And WAMS is a system that's not just used by DPI. It's a statewide system. It's actually administered by the State Department of Administration. And it is, for example, used by the Department of Motor Vehicles. It's used by the Department of Revenue. All different state agencies use it. What we use WAMS for at DPI is so that we can offer you one username and password that gets you into all of the different DPI WISE applications that you're going to need to use. That way you don't have to try to memorize a username and a password for 6 or 8 different things. You can get it all taken care of with one username and password. And the WAMS system is available at on.wisconsin.gov, as is noted there on the screen. And when you click on that link, you see the screen example that's there on the page as well. And what you're going to want to do, if you have never obtained a WAMS ID before, is click on the self-registration link, which you can see kind of in the middle of that screen example. We strongly suggest that the WAMS ID that you're going to use with the DPI applications is associated with your school email address. And the reason we say that is it's better for security reasons if the person who is accessing the PII that's available in these applications is doing so with a school email address. It's just a better way to do it. If you have a WAMS ID already, for example, if you are if you have an educator license and you're in the ELO system, the Educator Licensing Online System, that is probably associated with your personal email address. So you can create a new WAMS ID with your school email address associated, and that is perfectly fine to have more than one WAMS ID. In fact, in that situation, we would actually encourage it. That way you can keep the two IDs separate, and you can use the one that has the school email address associated with it when you log in to do your DPI work with the WISE data reporting and things of that nature. We also have a feature for personnel at your school to request access to the different DPI applications. And this is one of the functions of WISE Home. You'll see, if you haven't discovered it already, you'll see that just about all of the apps we talk about today, more or less, are going to have the WISE acronym in front of them, WISE Home being one of them. WISE Home is also a menu. So once you have assigned to you different DPI applications, you will go to WISE Home, and there's a menu there where you would access those applications. But here it also has a request access feature. And so if personnel at your school are going to need access to WISE Data Portal, to WISE ID, and the different other apps, this is the place where they can request that. And it's done by clicking on that Request Access tab at the top in our example here. Next, you're going to want to click the radio button next to Private, because we're private schools. And then that district drop down that's there will disappear, and it'll be replaced by a box where you can search for your school name. And once you have located your school, you select that, and then you're all set. You complete the other items on the form that have an asterisk next to them, like job title and the applications that you're requesting access to. If you'd like to, you can include comments to explain why you need access. And then there is a request access blue button at the bottom of the screen that you click, and that will save the form and send it off. Where does it send it to? It sends it to the DSA. And if there are any application administrators assigned to the applications that you're requesting access to, it will also be sent to them. And this comes in the form of an email. So the DSA or the application administrator, either one can go in then to the WISE Secure app, the WISE Secure tool, and assign those user roles, approve or deny the request. And then we have, oh, go
Sorry,
ahead.
Jeff. I was going to say thank you for all that information. We do have some WISE Secure tutorials linked here. Jeff, I don't know. I think I cut you off. Do you have anything further?
I was just going to say, with regards to these links, there's another helpful hint on just about every page of the DPI website. There's a search box in the upper right. If you type the word WISE Home, all is one word, WISEHOME, you will be taken, or the first link that will come up in your search will be the WISE Home information page. Click on that. It might not be a bad idea to bookmark it and keep it bookmarked. And all of the information we just talked about will be on that page, along with the link to the DSA request form, and along with a link to WISE Home for you to be able to sign into WISE Home.
Thank you, Mr. Perry, for all of this great information. If anyone has questions about assigning access or about using the WiseSecure application, if you have not yet assigned access to your colleagues, please do so. DPI encourages a data team approach when we are working with our WISE data student reporting. Please have yourself and another colleague. When we have just one individual, we can run into a lot of problems. When we have user role issues, if you are not, not at the school any longer or you're out unexpectedly. So please invite another colleague to join you and work as a team. And as the choice administrator, you will need to complete these clicks and get your colleagues set up with access to these applications.
Hey, Carrie, I have a quick question.
Yep.
So we went through and we got my colleague here, like where she requested access. Does she need to sign up as for a different role? Because when I go to like approve her, it only gives me the district admin role.
Nicole, we're gonna might have to work individually because we had some background work we had to do this morning before our training, and I don't know if the data refreshed yet for your school.
Okay.
For your colleague to get access this morning.
Okay.
Hopefully it'll, hopefully later on today it'll push over and then you can get things going.
Okay.
Good question. Good. Sorry. All right, at this time, we are going to discuss the next application, the school directory. We have another member of our customer service team, Ms. Carrie Tenley, to discuss this tool. This is, again, you're gonna wanna tune in and complete some of these clicks so that you can get everything set up in school directory.
Good morning. My name is Carrie Tenley, and I'm also part of the customer services team, and I work with Carrie Bow. My main job that I do is work with the Wisconsin School Directory, and I set up schools for the state. So just the Wisconsin School Directory, it is really neat. We moved it into a new application that's out there right now. The public-facing piece of it is this searchable school where the public can go, anyone from the public can go out there and they can research Wisconsin public school or a private school and get a whole bunch of information regarding these schools. So what we have out there now, we have school and district profiles that kind of show the big picture. It showcases the school. It shows contacts, addresses. We've incorporated interactive Google Maps so they can see schools surrounding them. It's really neat. Just over the last 7 or 8 years from where we came from, we used to do a printed version, if you can think of a phone book. So the Wisconsin School Directory used to be like a phone book that we would print once a year. So to go from that to this interactive live, where the data is updated version is really neat. We're still working with it. We're still improving it. But the public search piece of it's out there. In addition to this school directory being, the public search where people can go and look up schools, it's also, the school directory is a source of all the school data and school codes that go into all the other WISE systems. So before you can go into WISE data, before you can go into WISE graphs, before you can go into, you need to have your school set up in school directory and have all the codes assigned. And so the school directory also plays that part in the big picture. So, okay, so if you think of school directory, you can kind of think of it as two separate applications, which I kind of just explained to you. There is the public portal, which is viewable to the general public. You don't need to access it. It just, people go in there and they can download stuff, and it's used quite a bit. And then there's also the management portal, and that's where the schools come in to update some of their data. And this is viewable and editable only to authorized school staff. With what Jeff Perry just went over and having a role, you would need to have the application admin for school directory, and that person is specifically designed, they don't have edit capabilities, but they can designate authority to a person with directory update access to go in and to manage the school's data. So the first one I'm going to go ahead, first one I'm going to go over is I'm just going to take you through the public portal. And that's, again, that's our public facing piece where anybody, it's online, anybody can look at the data. And it's really a nice, it's really turned out very nice. I'm so proud of it. Again, it can be accessed by anyone. It's used keywords, it has intuitive searches, it shows comprehensive profiles of the schools, the districts, includes other organizations. It's mobile friendly. You can print the contacts. It's got links to other resources. One thing I want to really highlight about the public portal is that the data that you see on this public portal is displayed by school year. Okay, so that goes from July 1st through June 30th. So right now the public portal is set to the 2023-2024 school year, and that data started July 1st. So on July 1st, we roll it over to show the 2023-24 school year. Okay, go next. So this is what it looks like. There's many ways to search data. You can type in keywords in the search box. Up on top, you can click, there's links to click on public schools, private schools, contacts, and there's little boxes on the bottom too, which are essentially the same as the boxes on the top. And again, this is open to the public or anybody or anywhere that has access to the internet can go and use this tool. When I just went in this screen here, I clicked on private schools. So right away, it just shows a list of private schools. What I highlighted up here was up in the upper right-hand corner, you can see I highlighted a download. If you wanted to download this list at this point, you could go in and download it. Next to it's a PDF. You could print out a PDF of the list. On the left-hand side, you have filters. If you want to filter down and drill down and maybe select only certain ones with certain grades. In addition, where I highlighted up on top, which is the school name, that's a clickable link. So you can click into that link and even get more information. So this is what it shows. And what I did here is I printed out two screens. It's really one long page. I just couldn't fit it all on here. So on the left-hand side is what you see first, and then the right-hand side is below. But this is what it looks like, which is just so impressive compared to a printed out phone book kind of version of school directory. And all this, it's all interactive. You can click on the school districts. There's links where you can click on Abbotsford to get more information about the districts. The Google map, all that stuff below there is clickable too, where if you want to see some of the different middle schools or high schools in the area, it's all interactive. One thing about this screen is that if you clicked on the contacts on the previous page, right up in there, it says more contacts, it'll show all the contacts that you have set up for your school. And again, you can go into this contact page and you again can download it. You can print it as a PDF. You can filter it by different contact types. Or there's another option where it says statewide downloads. And if you click on the statewide downloads button up on top, here you can go next. Oh, I'm sorry. This is actually what the PDF version looks like. So it's a really nice form that can be printed out, but those you can download them in Excel. There, this is what the statewide download looks like. The statewide download shows all the contacts that are available. You can select on those. The two I selected on was like additional private school administrative representative, and then you can download all that information or just part of it. So that is kind of like a general overview of our online version. And again, this is new within the last couple of years, and we are still working on enhancing it, bringing in more information and fine tuning it. The piece where what's going to come into play with the schools is the management of this data, and that's the management portal. Now, the management portal still hasn't been rewritten to version 2. That's all nice and flashy. It's still the older version, but heads up, we are moving towards getting the management portal version 2 implemented in the upcoming months. So the management portal is a little bit different in that the data is by calendar year. I'm giving you approximate dates. So right now, the management portal is set to the 23-24 school year. What we're expecting schools to do at this point is to go in and update all their data. When they do, then it'll show out on our public portal. December 15th comes around and we will have collected a lot of data. At that point, we'll take a snapshot of the data for the 23-24 school year. And we will during that process, we shut school directory down or the management portal down for any changes. So we're expected by December 15th that any of the contacts or any of your school information, the grades, addresses, need to be accurate by approximately December 15th. And we send out notifications saying we're going to shut the system down at this point. Then we take a snapshot of the data, we roll it over, and somewhere around January 25th, we reopen the management portal. And when we do that, then we will be in the 24-25 school year for schools to go in and start updating their data, or for us to add new schools that are opening in the next school year. But while all that happens, again, the public portal won't change until July. It won't reflect any of those changes that are put in after January 25th until July 1st. So just to go back in history a little bit, before we had this management portal, what would happen would we send out paper forms, and then the paper forms would be sent to the schools, and then they'd send it back to us at DPI, and we'd manually go in and enter. So by having this management portal, we streamlined the process and made it a lot easier, right? And we also eliminated 4 different required forms. So we no longer collect those 4. So this is what the management portal looks like. And when you go out to this link and it'll say log into application. And of course, the screen that you'll get is what Jeff Perry was just talking about, was to fill in your WAMS ID and your password. And then you click sign in with WAMS. And the data that you're going to be managing for your school, there's not all that much, but it's very, very, very important. This is what your screen will look like. It should come up to your school. Definitely you want to check the low and high grade for the school year. That's going to be important for you submitting data. You can't submit data if you don't have the right grade ranges in. So definitely check the low and high grade. The email address is so important to keep that updated. That's how we send you out, like this application is going to be closing. Any type of communications that we need to make, or if we find something wrong, we use these emails as our mailing list. Heads up, where I showed you that save button is before the contacts, make sure you click that save button. That is going to be put in a better place, but right now it's kind of in the middle of the screen and a lot of people miss that save button down there. So anytime you go in and make changes, click save. One thing that's very important is your physical address. Private schools sometimes move and they change their physical address and they're located in a different district. If this happens, you need to notify us because we need to change your district code that's associated with your school. And that can only be done through a help ticket because it impacts systems and we need to notify people. But if your physical address changes, that you find yourself located in a new district, a new public school district, then we need a help ticket to go ahead, and that's something I would need to do. So the next important part, Carrie, are the district contacts. So there's 2 types of contacts. There's contacts that are required. And if you'll see these 2 that are on the choice administrator and the private school primary contact, those are required. You cannot delete those contacts. They will stay out there. The only thing you can do is you can edit the person. You can click on edit where I highlighted, and you can edit the person's information. After this, there's more contacts. If you wanted to add a new contact, you can click on add contact and add other contacts, but these 2 are definitely required. So this is what the contact form looks like. Again, you see on top, like you can only edit this contact. You cannot choose a contact type, but you can change the person, the local title. There is one option. Let's say you have a person that is no longer there. You might have an intern person or the position might be vacant. You can choose the position status and you can choose either vacant or intern, but please, we will call you. We'll say you can't really have this position vacant or intern. We need to have somebody in this if we find out that it's been left in that status for, too long. So again, that's a kind of a temporary solution. If you want to take a person who left, you want to take their name off, but you don't have somebody new, that's an option. But again, it's temporary. And we will, follow up because we do need to have those two contacts. And those two contacts are important to keep accurate, again, because that's how we do all of our communications, is we send it to the contacts that are listed in the school directory. So there's different types of changes you might need to do. So if you need to open or close a school, I put a link here because you're going to want to submit a school modification form. If you want to change a name, if your name changes, or again, like I just spoke about the district, you move and you find yourself in a new district, you're going to want to submit a help ticket. All other changes when it comes to the contact names, the addresses, the grade ranges, those can be made by authorized users. Now, I know, like you probably saw in the public portal that's facing, there's a lot more information in there. A lot of that data we get from other sources. We get files that we upload, for example, what, CC you're in, or there's a link to the report cards. We have a GIS system with the mapping. So we get a lot of that information from other places, but your responsibility is to make those changes on that form that I showed you. And please do that before December 15th, before we do the snapshot, because after December 15th, when we do that snapshot and we reopen up in January, we can go back and change the data, but it requires us putting in a programming fix, and it's not something we do quite often. So again, just a reminder, to review and update your data, please. That's in the application. It's not much. Again, it's the grades, the contacts, phone numbers. That's about it. But please do that and help us out. And then plus, that's what's public facing. That's how your school is going to look when people search for you. We are working on a new management portal interface. So heads up, that's going to change too. It's going to look a lot nicer, like the searchable one, the public facing one. And in the future, we're looking also to integrate the PI 1207 within school directory. So you can go to one place and do both forms. And this last piece is our webpage that pretty much covers, and then more, what I just all went over today. It is our school directory landing page that has all this information and more located. It's just a great resource to keep handy or maybe bookmark. Thank you.
Hey, Carrie, there was one question there on the chat. It's, what do you do if you offer 3-year-old kindergarten?
So if you offer 3-year-old kindergarten for the current year, we want you to report that in PK as a grade level.
In the PI 1207, right, Carrie?
In the PI 1207.
In
correct.
WISE data, 3-year-olds would not be reported.
And just a heads up, we're looking to change that for next year, that we might not need to be collecting that data. And of course, we want to keep things streamlined and collect what we need to collect. So heads up, that might be changing for the it's going to be 24-25 school year.
So to clarify, that PK value should not be submitted in the school directory, correct, Carrie? Just the PI 1207?
You would need to have it selected in the school directory for that grade.
For it to populate on.
Correct, because again, if you think of school directory, it's a source of all data. And so that data, those grade ranges flow to PI 1207. So yes, but in order to include PK right now, you have to either select PK or K4 because K4 grade is in our system is lower than PK for some. We're working on that. It's one of the changes. So if you have K4 through 12, you're fine. PK is going to be included. If you have PK and you don't have K4, then you just want to select PK.
Good question. Not a very
No, it is
easy
confusing, and
answer.
we are addressing this. We are definitely addressing this for the next school year.
Thank you, Carrie. And please send along any further questions you may have about school directory. If you don't have any, we are going to move forward to discuss our next application. Well, I should say it's a form, I should more so, of the PI 1207. I'm going to have Rachel join us today to discuss the PI 1207.
Rachel, you're muted.
Good, because that was a really smooth first time I said it too. Hello, everyone. My name is Rachel Zelmer. I'm actually on the special education team at DPI, and you'll be hearing from my colleague Brielle, I believe, later about ESCA and private schools. And what I'm going to talk about in this next section is this requirement for all private schools, choice or non-choice. So if you have existed before becoming a choice school, you have probably already participated in this data collection, but it's called the PI 1207 Private School Report. And in order to be considered an active and open private school in Wisconsin, this report needs to be completed annually. As Jeff and Carrie were going over the school directory and WAMs and getting into the systems, the PI 1207 private school report is a web-based application that you would log into with your WAMs ID. And it's a really, really simple process. It's a very short window to complete the PI 1207 private school report, but it's very, very easy at the same time. And I'm gonna show you the screens in just a second. One of the pieces I do just want to share with you is the list data elements collected through the So I just shared that in the chat. What the PI 1207 private school report is, and I'm in test right now, what the PI 1207 private school data collection is it's a requirement under state statute that annually the private schools, you're providing an assurance. You are verifying that you are meeting the requirements under Wisconsin state statute to operate as a private school. So you sign off on those assurance annually. The other piece is providing DPI with your enrollments, your third Friday in September enrollment. So all public school districts have a third Friday in September count where we're collecting the number of students enrolled in the public schools. And likewise, we do it for the private schools. And those enrollment counts are used for a variety of different programs. For instance, under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, it's the total student enrollment of both private schools and public schools that go into calculating the public school district's IDEA for like federal grant allocation that they receive. And in turn, part of that federal grant allocation is used to provide special education services to students who are parentally placed in private schools by their parents who are students with disabilities. So both public and private school enrollments are used for some federal programs to create allocations. And for other federal programs like ESCA, you have to complete this PI 1207 private school report in order for the LEA to know that you are an open private school and to do consultation with you each year and to discuss services that could be provided using their title funding. So the short window is it opens up shortly after the third Friday in September. So I think like this coming fall, it will be like September 18th. And don't worry, you're going to get a lot of information before this happens. We send out announcements. We have really good technical assistance written about how to do this. And there's lots of folks here who can help you make sure that you can log into this system and provide the information. And so it opens on September 18th, but the due date is October 15th. So this is why it is important to have a couple of different people who can access this report so that if there's someone gone or not available or just really busy during that time frame, there's a few different people that you can rely on to go and enter in this information. So this right now is what the PI 1207 private school data collection software looks like. There's a great explanation on the front about what's going to be included in this report. There's the first tab is asking whether or not your school is going to be open or closed in the coming year. And it's sort of a backwards written question because the correct answer for this is no. The question actually is, will your school be closed for the 23-24 school year? So you would click on no and save. If you accidentally click on yes, because your eyes see will you be open, and you click yes and you hit save, it'll look like kind of everything shut down. You can fix it by just flipping the status back to no, that you will not be closed for the 23-24 school year. The next section is the state statutes. And this is where I was saying that this is this annual requirement that as a private school, you are meeting the statutory requirements to operate as a private school in Wisconsin. And there's simply yes or no questions. All of the prompts have to have a yes in order to move forward. If for any reason you feel like the answer is no for your private school, you should have a further discussion with folks at DPI in case maybe it's a misunderstanding of what the statutory requirement is. If any of the prompts are no and stay no, then it means that your agency cannot operate as a private school in Wisconsin. So for the most part, you're just going through and you're reading these and you're saying that yes, your private school is still meeting these requirements. And then for enrollment, you're entering enrollment, and it's not broken out at all. What this is and what you'll see here is the grades here should reflect what Carrie was showing you in the school directory. So for this school, if you went out to the school directory and looked up this school, these are the grades that are served. So just know that that's where that is coming from. So if you have a school where you're only seeing like 1st through 5th grade on the enrollment page, that is because that is how your school is listed as grades served in the school directory. So what you're doing here is you are doing your current enrollment in 23-24 when this opens for your grades. It's not broken out by gender. So all the kids are going into one field. And then once you've completed the enrollments for your grades, if you serve 12th grade, then you will be required to enter in graduates, and this would be graduates for the prior year. So when this report opens up in 23-24, if you served 12th grade, then we would be looking at who graduated from 12th grade from your school in the spring of 2023, so this last year. If you don't serve 12th grade, this will actually just be completed for you. You won't be able to put in a number or a date. You can just skip over the graduates column. And then finally, once you've done those simple steps of looking at the statutory requirements and acknowledging them, and then entering in the enrollments, you can go to the confirmation page. This is where it will give you some information about whether or not you had any spaces that you didn't fill out, and then you can just go back to that section. And once you have green check marks here all the way down, you can confirm the data. And that's the only requirement with the PI 1207 private school report. However, vastly important that this is completed to keep your choice status, to participate under the ESCA federal programs for those Title I, Title II, Title III, and Title IV services provided by the public school district, and to ensure that your local school district has an IDEA allocation that is reflective of your participation in the PI 1207 private school report, and that shows up in their allocation and then would further show up in the amount that they reserve for equitable services for special education under IDEA for private school students with disabilities. So once again, this will be open September 18th. It's going to be due October 15th. And prior to that, you will receive a lot of technical assistance and information regarding completing this report.
Rachel, did we
Thank
want to
you
just
very
touch on
much.
the statuses real quick if what happens in school directory?
Sure. Actually, I kind of skipped that, Carrie. Do you want to
Okay.
do you want to talk about that?
Sure, I can. So at the end of this data collection, we go and we review all the data. If your school is closed and you selected closed, then I go back into school directory and I will close the school. And when we say closed, we mean that the school is operationally closed. It's no longer open. If the school is still open and the 1207 did not get filled out, then we put the school in an inactive status. When it goes into inactive status, it will not appear anymore in the public search and the public portal. And also it will, there's some funding too that will impact. And you will not be able to go in and have that school marked as open until the next year's PI 1207 is filled out completely. So like Rachel said, it's very important that, that schools go in and submit the PI 1207.
Yep, and I will say that when it comes to schools participating in the choice program, we have never had a private school not complete the PI 1207 private school report because you're in the choice program, and there's sort of ongoing contact with you and DPI consistently through the year. We do make sure that we get a hold of someone to go in and do it. But right, for schools that aren't choice and don't complete it, it does mean that they cannot participate under like the food and nutrition program for school lunch, and then are not eligible to participate under the ESCA federal grant program.
This is great information. Thank you so much, Rachel and Carrie, for giving us some very detailed information on school directory and PI 1207. Again, please throw your questions in the chat as they come up. We are going to move on to the next application discussing, well, before we do, I want to kind of talk about our learning targets and where we are. So at this point in the morning, we've discussed our WiseSecure application. Please have your staff access WAMS IDs and give them user access to the secure reporting applications, because like we said, we highly encourage a team approach to WISE data reporting. We want you to go into the school directory, update your grade levels, update the physical location of the school, as well as all of the contact information for the school. Be aware that the PI 1207 is opening September 18th. That is going to be on your to-do list when the fall comes. Hopefully we can have the majority of our clicks completed so that PI 1207 will just be one thing rather than all the other onboarding pieces. The next learning target here for Ed5 Credential is we are working to attain the key and secret so that you can enter that into your student information system, your SIS, to begin that data flow from your SIS to WISE Data Portal. So listen in and learn how to use Ed5 Credential best practices and how to attain that key and secret for the data flow. So we are going to hear from our data collections team, one of our colleagues, Heather.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Heather Klook. I'm Vendor Relationship Manager here in the collections team. And talking about Ed5 Credential, Carrie gave a really good overview. One thing that might be helpful for you is trying to differentiate between what a key and secret is compared to a username and password. And you know, in your vendor application, or even just logging into your email or your network in general, you use a username and password. And this will be the same case when you're trying to access any of our WISE applications. But vendors, they need a key and secret to pass the data through the WISE Data Portal. So you can kind of think of these as a username and password for the API, but they're actually just a little bit different. The key and secret is something that the vendor needs to be able to use the API. If you were at the WISE Data Conference, but you may not have been, we actually showed a video during one of our sessions that talked about the API as being a waiter. So if you think about your vendor application being you sitting at a table in a restaurant, that waiter takes your order and it transfers it to the kitchen. You can think of our WISE systems as that kitchen. So to be able to make that waiter be able to transfer that information between those two locations, a key and secret is required. Vendors differ on how they manage those keys and secrets. Sometimes you will need to contact your vendor and say, hey, I have a new secret. They have the ability to be able to look up this information in the Ed5 credential, the place that you're going to be creating and generating this. Some of them actually also allow for you to enter that into the application itself. So regardless, with you being new, you might want to take that secret when you have it and tell the vendor, your primary contact, that you have that information so that your system will then be able to send data through the API to WISE Data. Next system, Carrie. Carrie, do you want me to open up the presentation to move to the next slide? Oh, thank you. So earlier, Jeff showed you WISE Home, and you had a menu bar across the top, and he showed the request for access form. Now we've actually moved on to that apps menu, and you can see underneath the applications, one of them is WISE Data, and WISE Data has two applications underneath that, the Ed5 Credential application and the WISE Data Portal, which we'll get to later. So again, the Ed5 Credential application is really used as a place for you to be able to add a vendor subscription. And this is making sure that you have the right vendor associated with your school. So accessing the Ed5 Credential application, it, like many other applications, has you go through the process of making sure that you're going to follow our agreements to protect policy and protect our data. And that really reinforces the FERPA regulations, as well as best practices with how to handle this information. So the very first time you log into Ed5 Credential, you will see the screen asking for you to affirm that you're going to respect the data that's there, that you're going to comply with federal laws, that you're not going to disclose information, that you're going to keep things confidential, that your password is important, keep those things close to you, and don't share with others. And that's really the intent of this. And then you click agree. Once you click agree, you're going to get yet another approval. Whoop, back up, please, Carrie. That is your district approval to share data with the vendor. So the relationship with the data is really between you and the vendor. So you're making that agreement that the vendor can share that information with us at the state. Thank you, Carrie. So once you approve that, you'll get another screen. On this screen, I just pulled little snippets of it, so it might be kind of hard to see looking at this right now, but when you log in and you have the opportunity to look at it a little bit more closely, you'll see on the first step is to add a subscription, and it's a button on that far right-hand side, I should say. Once you click that button, you're going to get a dialog box, and that dialog box is going to ask you what subscription information you want to put in. So that's the dialog box on the right-hand side where it says new subscription. In that circled box, you see a vendor name and you select your vendor. Next is selecting what kind of access you want. And because this is going to be a student information system, you're going to write on student data. And at this point, you've pretty much set up everything that you need to do. You click Save Changes. When you click that Save Changes, it's going to bring you back to the main screen. You're going to see your vendor listed, and you're going to see your API credentials, that key and secret that I was talking about. And those should not be shared with anybody other than your vendor, of course. So you'll notice that, probably not right now because I have it all blurred, but that secret is going to be, I want to say a 16-digit secret. It's long. It's not something that you can easily commit to memory. But when you give that information to your vendor or you're putting it in the vendor system and that connection is made between your SIS and the API, that information gets to be hashed. And what I mean is that it's blocked out. It's kind of like when you look at certain screens and you'll see passwords just being in dots. We do the same sort of thing with a secret to make sure that it stays secret. One thing that you will see sometimes is that if you go to look for the secret and you don't remember what it is, you're actually probably not going to be seeing it there. And sometimes people will inadvertently click what we have as a reset button next to it. And when you do that, that changes that secret and breaks the connection with your vendor. So be really conscientious that when you have a secret and it's already in place and all that data is flowing appropriately, if something's not working right, make sure that you touch base with your vendor before you update that secret. Next slide, please. Actually, that's all I have. Any questions for me?
A few points that I do want to cover, Heather. You did a very thorough explanation. When you set up this key and secret, your vendor is going to get an email. So your vendor, when it's listed and you select this and you choose their resource access, this will prompt an email to go to your vendor to let them know that your school has established a key and secret within EdFi credential. Do not email the key and secret to your vendor. Again, do not email these credentials to your vendor. Email is not a secure resource to be exchanging information. This key and secret is establishing that gateway between your student information system and WISE Data Portal. Your student information system is housing a lot of very private, sensitive data, and we do not want this key and secret to be easily accessible. Email is not secure. So what happens is they receive that email that you have established a key and secret. They can go in and retrieve that, okay? Now, do they always? No. So you may have to send them an email to say, hi, I set up my key and secret. One thing you need to ask, again, if I could put some like flashing lights around this question, please establish with your SIS if you need to enter the key and secret or if these credentials are something they enter for you on the back end. So if you're taking notes right now or writing to-dos, add to your list how to enter the key and secret in your SIS. Do you do it or does your vendor do it? So again, ask questions as they come up. Hopefully you were able to follow the clicks and establish that key and secret this morning so that you have that created and then you can get data flowing. Let's see if we have any questions in the chat that need addressing before we move on. Nope. Okay, so we're going to move forward to discuss the next application, that is WISE ID. The WISE ID is the application that is assigning a unique ID to every student that you're reporting. And we're going to talk about some of the nuances of every student that you're reporting, okay? So our learning targets today with WISE ID. I want you to understand how to navigate the match review process. We're going to talk about how to submit a change request and how to report a duplicate WISE ID. I know that this is a lot of clicks. I know this is kind of redundant. Everything's WISE, right? But the WISE ID, please tune in on this. This is when we get the most help tickets, the most questions, the most hand holding, because it is, it can be kind of complicated, okay? I'm just gonna be honest with you. So don't be ashamed if you have questions or you're finding it complicated, because it's a common experience. We're not trying to make it complicated. We want it secure. We want all of this private data, this very sensitive data, safe, okay? And so we go to great lengths to do that. And so once you get your feet wet with this application, it becomes very intuitive and it take off, no problem. It's just a learning curve for you initially, okay? So let's talk about what WISE ID is. This is, again, a separate application, and its main role is entirely to assign and maintain these unique, permanent, and unduplicated student identifiers called WISE IDs. The WISE ID follows the person from school to school as they transfer. Not applicable if a student is transferring to a private non-choice school, or if they transfer to a choice school and no longer report to WISE data. So if they, for some reason, choose not to participate in the choice program, or if they choose not to participate in the choice program and the school is opt out. So there's a lot of variances. And then even if a student graduates and decides to enter the work world or their career as an educator, that WISE ID will follow them in that teacher role throughout Wisconsin. WISE ID and WISE data are married. They link to each other and the data must match. So you are going to be seeing validation messages in WISE data regarding any issues with your student WISE IDs. And this is where the demographic values are really tied in heavily. The WISE ID is going to reference all of those primary demographic values. Okay, so this is some important information for you to be aware of. For you, at a minimum, to attain a WISE ID, you need to enter this information into your student information system at a minimum. Am I saying that you only need to enter this the whole school year? No. WISE data collects a lot. We have a lot of data collections. But just initially for this onboarding process to get you started to attain a WISE ID, you want to verify these things. Are you using full names? We do not want, you know, if the student, the student's name, his nickname is Junior, we don't want that nickname. We want the full name. Okay, so we want William instead of Billy. Make sure that you're including suffixes. And then we're going to talk about how to review matches, because we have so many students being reported to this application. There are going to be matches, and we're going to talk about how to take our time to value our time, because it can become a tangled web if you start reporting your student under the WISE ID. So we're going to carefully review our matches, and we're going to talk about how to report duplicate WISE IDs. Now we're going to pause really quick. We've got this important message here for you in your SIS. My attendees today, in your SIS, please be sure that your choice students are flagged. Okay. Even if your school opted out of the all student report card, you need to be sure that only your choice students are flagged with the choice student indicator. There is a choice student flag. It's usually a drop down in the student information system. It may be a radio button, but go into those student reporting windows that are specific to WISE data and locate the choice student indicator or the choice student flag. This is where you're selecting that, yes, the student is participating in the parental choice program. This matters. Another thing I want you to reflect on. Today is August 1st. Today is the deadline for your school to submit the form on if you intend to report all of your enrollments, which would mean you opted in to the all student report card, or are you reporting only your choice participants, indicating that you opted out of the all student report card? If your school opted in, that means you're reporting everyone and you're going to participate in all of the data collections for all of your students, regardless if they're private pay or choice participants. You are going to attain WISE IDs for all of your participants. If you opted out and are only reporting your choice participants, you are only going to be attaining WISE IDs for your choice participants. There is a setting in your SIS indicating whether you should be reporting all of your enrollments for WISE data or only the choice participants. Write that down. If you opted out of the all student report card, you do not want to go through the work of attaining WISE IDs for all of your students. Another thing that I want to keep in mind as educators, using best practice, understanding how sensitive this data is, but also the privacy and trust of our families and students. We are going to be using best practice and using discretion and privacy when we are collecting this information so that we are not in any way calling out any of our students who are participating in the choice program. This is private matters. We do not want this data collection and the work for WISE data reporting to any way highlight or separate our choice enrollments or our students who are participating in the choice program. Again, we're working to build trust, and we know that this is a lot of intimate data, and the participation in these programmings is private, is discreet. So as you are collecting this data, think about using best practices and how to collect this information so that it is in a private manner. With that being said, you verified if you're opt-in, opt-out. This is step-by-step directions on how to use the WISE ID application. So when you log into WISE ID via WISE Home, which everyone, if you have not bookmarked it as Jeff Perry had previously suggested, and I think Carrie Tenley as well, please bookmark WISE Home now. You're going to be using WISE Home heavily. From WISE Home, you're logging into WISE ID and you're going to be updating both your primary and secondary contacts. At the top, under the admin menu, you are going to be selecting agency notifications. And then from those agency notifications, you're going to add the email address for the staff that are going to be working with WISE ID. So that'll be your administrative assistant, possibly your principal, or any other educators that are on the data team. So add the email address so that you're receiving these agency notifications. You're going to opt into agency notifications for student data only. Choice schools do not submit any staff data. You can select the days of the week you want notifications that WISE ID would be emailing you, and then you're going to choose update. Why on earth would you want another email? I know it, but you do. You could have issues sitting in WISE ID and you could unknowingly not be logging into the application and it'll just sit there and it will not be resolved and you would be unaware. Okay, so really please update these agency notifications, add the days of the week and click update so that if there is an issue, you're receiving an alert. Otherwise, the issues will just sit there until you log in. This will be a great prompt for you. We really want that clear communication. I have hyperlinked each of the demographics necessary to attain a WISE ID. We're going to break some of these apart because this data collection may be new to you. So we're going to talk about how to collect the data and what all of this means for WISE ID. Race ethnicity is broken down into a two-part question. The first question is if the student is Hispanic or Latino. That's going to be a yes or no. And then the next piece is selecting the federal categories that apply to this person. Okay, so this person can certainly choose all of the categories or just one. Okay, so I'm going to use my children as an example. My children, for is Hispanic, Latino, would be marking yes. And then the categories that would apply to this person, their aunt recently did like the 43andMe or the Ancestry research and all that. So we found out that their side of the family they are of Filipino origin. So we would be marking Native Hawaiian or other Pacific Islander. My kids' family, they also have a lot of roots from Mexico. So we would be marking white as well. The American Indian would not apply. Well, you know, the Ancestry showed that there were some tribal nations from Central South America in my kid's side DNA. We would not be marking this because it's not American Indian. Okay, so my students, Hispanic, Latino, yes, we're marking white, and Native American or Pacific Islander. So parents may have questions on this. We do have some guiding documents to support you if you want to include this in your enrollment paperwork with the guiding documents. I should rephrase this. Please, you have to include these questions for the students that you're reporting so that you can collect it. We do have guiding documents to support if you would like to include that in your enrollment paperwork. When we're submitting data about educational progress, we encourage you to use WISE IDs. Even when you're sending me an email with a question, please use the WISE ID instead of the student information. Never include both the student name and the WISE ID. Again, email is not the best or safest form of communicating this sensitive data. Please use a help ticket, or if you're sending me an email, just use a WISE ID. All right, so we're going to break apart some of these other pieces that WISE ID is going to record. And then I'm going to talk about preparing your enrollment paperwork. So the first piece, let me get my laser pointer off, is the economically disadvantaged status. This is the demographic data that I was referring to earlier. This is something that you are going to include for your enrollment for either your choice only because you opted out, or for all of your enrollments because you opted in to the all student report card. You need to report a student's economically disadvantaged status. If your school participates in NSLP or the National School Lunch Program, you are more than likely using direct certification. You're familiar with this process. It's going to be intuitive and it's already going to be reported in your SIS. If your school does not participate in National School Lunch Program, then you may be participating in Community Eligibility Provision or CEP, and you may be using the alternate household income form. Or if your school is not participating in any sponsored lunch programs, you still need to report the status. Economically disadvantaged status is linked to the food service program eligibility. It is reported as a yes, the family meets a certain income threshold, or no, to be considered economically disadvantaged. Notice we have bolded here The economically disadvantaged status is reported separately from a student's food service eligibility. Even if you do not participate in a sponsored lunch program, you still need to report both of these pieces, okay? And we're going to talk about that. Well, how do we do that, Carrie? We don't participate in any of these programs. How do we find this out? You are going to use, as a school, if you do not participate in any of the programming, National School Lunch Program or Community Eligibility Provision, you're going to use the alternate household income form. We have a PDF version. We have many languages. Well, I shouldn't say many. We have Spanish and Hmong available. And so with these PDF versions, it's going to populate here, and it has some verbiage about the community eligibility provision. And I am going to take a look. Usually we have a Word document available as well, and I don't know that we have it posted yet. No, we don't. Okay, so we're going to create a Word document so you don't have to use this PDF. Because right now it tells you that you participate in the community eligibility provision and you don't. Oh, there it is. Just kidding. We have one made for you. Yes. So this is for the schools that do not participate in community eligibility provision. Notice there's a year posted at the top. This form is released annually. You can't save this form and use it next year because the income limits do change. The way this works is, again, use this with your enrollment. Have the students entered at the top. The way the household income ranges work. Ideally, the families stay within each column. So if they're a family of 4, and they are making up to $55,500, if they are within that first row, any of these rows, the first row, they are considered, yes, economically disadvantaged, okay? Now, if they are at the $55,500 or more, they are considered no, not economically disadvantaged, okay? Now, hopefully they don't go, you know, I'm a family of 2 and we're at this. We know right away if they're at the top, they would not be economically disadvantaged if they're a family 2. But that's the way the income thresholds work. If you need support in this, certainly contact me. I'm happy to help you. There is some guidance at the bottom of this sheet here. And it's telling us, and again, if you're tuning out and you're getting tired of hearing voices, tune back in. Lean into your computer screen for a second. This guidance you want to know. I'm talking about the second page of the alternate household income form of how to report this economic data. It tells us for schools not participating in CEP or NSLP using this alternate household income form, you are going to report students as true if they qualify as true for economically disadvantaged status. And they are going to be marked as unknown for food service eligibility. Even if you do not participate in any kind of sponsored lunch program, you are still going to mark the food service eligibility as unknown. Now, if you do participate in NSLP or CEP, you're going to report accordingly the free reduced full price values. Any questions on reporting economically disadvantaged status? Usually that's when we get a lot of questions on, so that's why we covered it together today.
Hey, Carrie, quick question.
Yep.
Do we send this form out in an email, or do we send this out like a paper copy?
Whatever works best for you. Great question. You can have this at your parent portal. You could have it if you do like a whole paper enrollment pack, if you want it to be an email, whatever is best for you and your families.
Okay, and then do we send this out to all of our students or just our choice student families?
Did you choose to opt in to the all student report card to report all of your enrollments? Okay, so just your choice families.
Okay, perfect.
Hey, Carrie, I could have missed this. I don't know if I was zoning out. Do we need to do this and NSLP?
No. If you're participating in NSLP, you're going to be using direct certification. Great question. So direct certification is going to identify if the family is eligible for free, reduced, or full price lunches.
Okay.
And then that'll be done for you.
Okay, so if we're doing that, then we don't need to do the alternative.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Yep. Good
Awesome.
question.
Thank you so much.
Good questions. Okay. Next, we're going to quickly talk about English proficiency. So we know as educators, we want to service all of our students. Wisconsin is a very segregated state, and unfortunately, many of our students who are English learners do fall between the cracks because they may not be identified. There may not be that home family communication. We want to build resources. We want to build communication. We want to be on your team and support you in these conversations so that we can see success in the classroom for both our educator who's scaffolding instruction and our learners. And so one of the tools to build that success is identifying our students who are English learners. One way to do that is using the home language survey. And so the home language survey is hopefully linked in this page. Here it is, linked on the ELP page that I have linked. Use this as a screener to identify if a student is eligible to work within the programming for students who are English learners. Ideally, you've already had the conversation with your public district during your title consultation to discuss the needs at your school. Any students who are English learners and are already going to move forward with that in the fall. Certainly, if you haven't, contact them. And if you're aware already that you have students who are English learners, contact them and discuss what resources are available to you, because there is title funding, which we are going to discuss later today. If you have students who are incoming from another choice school or from a public district, look at their enrollment paperwork and look for an ELP code. Choice schools are not required to report or service English language proficiency, but we certainly know that is not best practice, and we are not going to see success for those students. We're causing them harm when we don't give them the resources they need. And so you may be seeing ELP, English language proficiency. This is a 1 through 7, where it is the production or the development of the English language through codes 1 through 7, according to the WIDA screener, or I should say the access. And so this will live in your transferring paperwork. Enter these codes in the ELP within your student reporting windows. You know, it may be 3.3 or 4.6. Only enter the whole digit. Oops. You do not have to enter the digits following the whole number. You may be seeing validation messages alerting you that a student has an ELP code. This is a great flag to say, hey, I think we need to build my educator's toolkit and help them scaffold instruction to build success with the student. You would enter that ELP code in the SIS, but that is, you know, the least of the academic and student support concerns is entering that code. We want to support that educator and that student in that learning environment. And so we have lots of resources to do so, and we're on your team to help you do that. So this is the demographic data WiseID supports. This is walking through how to use the WiseID upload tool. Now, a lot of the SIS vendors already have WiseID already built into the SIS. So as you are individually updating the student's demographic information, you are typically able to retrieve the WiseID from your SIS directly. If for whatever reason you're not able to do so, you can export a CSV spreadsheet from your SIS, and you can input that into WiseID. There's upload person data. You would up the person type And then you would choose the file here. You would choose that CSV spreadsheet. You would choose upload, and you would get a real time. You would be able to see your upload with the file name. You would be able to see errors. Everybody gets errors, so please don't feel bad if you do. And you would be able to see if you have any potential matches. That's what we're going to talk about right now, folks. Get excited. We're going to talk about how to review the match review process. This is the errors. You can review these. You got to clean up the errors in your SIS, export the file again, try the upload again. Okay, so you're just fixing things, exporting that fresh sheet, putting it again until you don't have any errors. And then if you have change requests, this is if you changed an existing WISE ID information. So like, let's say a previous school had entered the student as William, but you tried to enter the student as Billy. We're going to stop you there and we're going to say, hey, we're going to need you to submit a change request. That doesn't sound right. We have the student as William. If a school is trying to submit a change request, you can deny it. So like, let's say you had this is year one, but next year, if you had a student transfer out and they were trying to change the name to Billy when you had William, you can deny. You can say, nope, the student's name is William, don't change it. So this is the change requests. We were supposed to be talking about match reviews. I got really excited. I don't know where my slide deck went to change requests, but that's okay. Change requests are important. So here you can see this is the change request screen. You need to enter comments. So there's human error that happens all the time. This is the stuff that you're entering in the SIS. So let's say you misspelled a student's name and you need to go in and change it. You are going to submit a change request. You have to submit comments to change the student's information. So notice that we have a tab here labeled comments. That's where we force you to submit comments. You can't get away from it. And it tells you what the old value is and what the new value. So let's say you're trying to take off the suffix. Well, guess what? DPI is not going to let you. We have so many students in the state. We want that suffix because it makes it easier to identify who is who. So again, have those suffixes. We want full names. We want middle names. Try to get as much information as you can. Some ways to do that is verify using documentation. You could use a birth certificate. You can use a vaccination record. Check your upload results to see if change requests were intentional. Again, sometimes it's just human error. And then enter the required comments. This is information about when to deny a change request. This isn't going to happen often. This is what I got really excited about. Our potential matches, folks. This is going to populate in your SIS. Like I said, it's built into your SIS, WISE ID. The SIS is going to take your students' information and it's going to query other students in the state that have WISE IDs that look similar, and those are called potential matches. And you're going to walk through a match review with me. Get excited. So what we're going to do at this time, this is the match review screen. We are going to review these matches. And the way we do that, there's a lot of blue, okay? Don't get lost in the sea of blue. I want you to kind of hold on to these dark blue banners. It says, here's the record, you upload it. It's going to give your students information. This is going to look a little similar but different because it's going to be in your SIS if you're using the SIS tool. So you're going to have your students' information. It gives us the parent guardian information. Ideally, if you have birth location, enter it in your SIS. Please give us as much as you can so it makes this process easier. So we don't get messed up with the wrong WISE IDs and then it creates headaches for everyone. The next piece is going to say, here are the existing people that look similar. So again, we ran a query and we said, hey, we found someone that looks like your student. Is this them? And so you're going to review that. You're going to review the parent guardian information. If there's birth information, you're using birth date, okay? And so what you're going to do is you can say, nope, that is not my Jill. I'm going to create a new person, or maybe it is your Jill. And you can click on the radio button next to their WISE ID and claim that WISE ID. So again, if you don't find a match, click the radio button to create a new person. It's going to alert you. It's going to say, are you sure? Are you really sure you want to create a new person? Because we do not want duplicates. We don't want more WISE IDs for the same student. If you find that you did that, if you said, oops, I did what Carrie told me not to do, I created a duplicate, that's okay. We can fix it. So this is the screen for you. Notice there's tabs at the top. Now we're in the report duplicates tab. You're going to want to enter the 2 duplicates and enter some comments to help us clarify, and we're going to work with you on that. These are screenshots of how to navigate WISE ID. If you need to make changes to an ID within the system, you're going to use the person search edit, and that's where the change requests come in. Okay. Before you log off this session, please update your contacts in WISE ID at the very minimum. Go into WISE ID right now. At the top right-hand side, click on Agency Contacts. If it didn't already prompt you initially, it should prompt your contacts to come up right away first time you log in. Okay. I know that was a lot of me talking. Thanks for holding in there. Beginning of your enrollment materials, I'm going to click through these a little quickly because we do have some more presenters coming. We have something called the Digital Equity Internet Access at Home Survey. This is optional. We know that at-home learning is a reality. And so this is to help you understand what devices and internet connections are available to your students. So this at-home survey is available to use in your enrollment paperwork. And if necessary, you may need to, if you have at-home learning as required, you may need to have Insight then to equip your students with the necessary information. Some more clicks that you need to do. If you didn't already, update your school address and contact information in school directory, grade levels. Get in there and do that, please. We want you to consider adding the ancestry and ethnic origin questions to the race ethnicity reporting. This has been a new initiative. CIS vendors already have it built in, so you may not even have to do any work for it. If you have a parent portal, it'll just be public facing, parent facing, and so they'll be able to enter their demographics. This is to help you with culturally responsive teaching. This is to help you understand who your families and communities are, so that you can better support. We're going back into the PowerPoint. And then if you have any questions at all, please use the user voice feedback form that lives on our DPI sites. This is more information on the ancestry ethnic origins data collection. We also have a tribal affiliation data collection. Again, this is going to be built into your CIS already. So if you have a parent portal, it'll be parent facing right away so that we can support projects that are going to develop, test, and demonstrate the effectiveness of services and programming to improve education among our Indian children and youth. Another tool, I want your ears to perk up a little bit because this is going to save you a lot of time, as this is all just kind of beginning of your information for you folks. The Wisconsin, well, I should say the immunization registry tool is built into your CIS if you are an opt-in school. Okay, so every year, as you know, you had to submit a report to Department of Health Services, DHS. And it was a huge burden to schools. Schools were telling us it takes so much time for us to input all of this data into our CIS one by one. And so what we've done is we've collaborated with Department of Health Services to pull down from the Wisconsin Immunization Registry, all of those pieces of data to populate into your SIS. So this is something that's built into your SIS. If you are in opt-in school, you can pull that data down and have it populate. Please, if you're interested with that, submit a help ticket and we can get you going. Another piece for the beginning of the school year, we're going to talk more about this, so I'm just going to quickly brush over it, is our title consultation. We should have already had that established, discussing our title services. Your students may be serviced by the public district, okay? And so that's a great thing. We love to see that collaboration. Public schools are required to report any of the services that they're providing, including private choice students. And so they have to report your student in their SIS. And what they're going to do is they're going to indicate a parentally private place student, PPP, within their SIS. They're going to have a non-primary enrollment reported to WISE Data, and you would have the primary enrollment. Another way to collaborate with your local public school district is identifying any students who may be within the status of migrant. There are many services and resources that we can provide to migrant students. Again, we don't want these students to fall through the cracks. Migrant students have about 50% graduation rate. So if you have any inkling that a student may benefit and may qualify for migrant services, please contact your public district or our state migrant recruiter so that we can support that student and their family. Really quickly, if you're a choice administrator, you are going to use the WISE admin tool that is living in WISE Home so that you can review the data collections. So we have a snapshot calendar, a lot of important dates here. You're going to want to go into the snapshot calendar, look at those dates. There's an administrator acknowledgement. This is what the screen looks like. Complete those acknowledgements. You're going to enter your contact information there. And then the WISE admin also houses all of the agency contacts for each of the applications. So once you complete your setup, go in here to reference, make sure every application has a contact assigned to it. We have the, again, snapshot calendar. We are working toward our December snapshot. I think it's December 8th this year. We're going to snapshot your data. So we want everything clean and accurate by that time. If for whatever reason you have major SIS vendor issues or your data is not clean and accurate, DPI asks for you to submit something called a data errata letter, and that you would use WISE admin to do that. Okay, with that being said, we are going to move to another presenter. We're going to hear from the Office of Educational Accountability to discuss assessment requirements. Dwayne, are you ready?
Good morning. How's it going?
Hey, Carrie,
Great to hear from you. Oh, sorry. Yes.
I have a quick question before we move on. If we're doing the help ticket, what application would we put for the immunization registration integration?
Heather, can you throw in the chat the WIR? There's a separate ticket.
Thank you.
You got
We'll
it,
throw
Carrie.
that in there. Thank you.
All right. Good morning. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you, Dwayne.
Okay. I'm going to be talking about the assessment requirements for choice schools for the 23-24 school year. So next slide. So each school will be designating an assessment coordinator, and that person will be responsible for the overall assessment requirements for all of the assessments that are required for your individual schools. We will communicate with this person on an as-needed basis during the summer, but then once the school year starts, we'll be communicating with you on a weekly basis. Next slide. So the actual list of assessments that are required. Forward exam for English language arts and mathematics in grades 3 through 8. Forward exam for science in grades 4 and 8. Forward exam for social studies for students in grades 4, 8, and 10. Pre-ACT secure for students in grades 9 and 10, and then the ACT with writing for students in grade 11. DPI pays the cost of choice students taking the assessments. You may also administer the exams to your non-choice students, but you'll be required to pay for the assessments for those students. And we'll provide the cost for testing really right around the beginning of December. We should have the cost for the spring administrations for these assessments. Next slide. The forward exam, it's an online, okay, we're one ahead, I guess. Forward exam is an online assessment administered in the spring. And then we have a link there where you can find additional information. Next slide. Pre-ACT Secure is also an online assessment administered in the spring. 4 subject areas: English, reading, math, and science. And then the next assessment, next slide, ACT with writing is the one assessment that is administered via paper and pencil or online, also administered in the spring. English, reading, math, science, and writing are the subject areas. All right, so now we get into a few more of the details. For schools with fewer than 20 choice students in the tested grades, the assessment can be waived. So if you have fewer than 20 students in grades 3 through 12, you're not required to administer the assessments. The one thing is, if you do elect not to administer the assessment, say maybe we only have 5 or 6 students in grades 3 for this current school year or this coming up school year, and so you're falling under that 20 student limit and you decide not to administer, we will still report the number of students participating in the choice program in the school on our reports that we publicize. So that's just so you're aware. So it's not like there's not going to be any kind of notification. You will be, all of our public reporting will indicate how many students are possible to be tested, and then the number who are actually tested. Okay, next slide. Parental opt-out. So each parent or guardian who wishes to excuse their child from testing is allowed to do so. Schools should receive written documentation from parents and maintain that information at the school level. School level reports on DPI's assessment page and the school report card will indicate the number of students in the school and will identify the number of students that tested, as well as the number of students that were opted out. Right, next slide. Civics exam requirement. This is at a high school level assessment requirement. That's in addition to the assessments that were mentioned earlier. This test is a requirement for graduation. It's required to be 100 items long and consists of the 100 questions that may be asked of an individual applying for citizenship by the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. Test may be completed at any time between 9th and 12th grade, and each individual school is responsible for the administration and oversight of the exam. DPI does not administer this exam. You would be administering this one yourself. Students are required to correctly answer at least 65 of the questions on the exam. However, students with an IEP are required to complete the exam, but are not required to meet the benchmark of 65 correct answers. Limited English proficient pupils are allowed to complete the test in the pupil's language of their choice, and students are allowed to retake this assessment until they pass. And for this is unique for the civics exam requirement. It applies to all students at all choice schools, at all choice high schools. So both choice and private pay students are required to complete the exam as a condition of graduation. Students may not opt out of completing the requirement, and the test must be taken even if there are less than 20 choice pupils at the school. And that's the next slide. Any questions at this point in time, I'd be happy to answer. Right, that's pretty much all I have at this point in time. Thank you.
Thank you, Dwayne. We look forward to collaborating with you on this school year's assessments.
Excellent.
Feel free to reach out to Dwayne with any assessment questions or pop them in the chat today. We have more from the Office of Educational Accountability. We are going to be hearing about more about our school report cards and accountability. Katie?
Hi, Carrie. Can you hear me?
Sure can. Thanks for joining today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Good morning, everyone. My name is Katie Schumacher. I'm an education consultant in the Office of Educational Accountability. And today I'm going to provide a brief overview of accountability. So high level, state statute requires the Department of Public Instruction to annually publish school and district accountability report cards. And those report cards are produced for all public schools and districts in Wisconsin and for any private school accessing funding through the choice programs. And there's really kind of two main purposes with the report cards. One is to provide information to the public, and the second is to provide data to schools on specific areas of strength and areas of opportunity. So kind of looking at this slide 2, first we want to talk about the choice student report cards. So all choice schools receive a report card based upon only the students attending with a voucher. And there's certain minimum, oops, sorry, Carrie, if you want to go back to the previous slide, thank you. So there's minimum data requirements. So on bullet point 2, you'll see there's a requirement for 2 years of data of at least 20 tested students who were enrolled for the full academic year. And the next thing with the third bullet point I want to briefly talk about is the timeline for these report cards. So you guys are probably wondering, you know, what's the timeline we have to worry about? So the 2022-23 report cards, which do not apply for your schools, will be released in this fall. So this fall, you will not receive a report card. However, in fall of 2024, you'll receive your first report card, but with only 1 year of data, it won't be rated or it won't be scored. In the fall of 2025 is when you'll have the opportunity to receive your first scored report card. And don't worry, I'll reiterate that timeline again in a subsequent slide because I know it's important and a lot of information is being given to you at once. Carrie, if you could kindly go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So let's talk a little bit more about what report cards contain. So the first thing I want to talk to you about is resources, where you can get more information on the report cards. Obviously, we have a limited amount of time today, but you'll see the report cards is in blue and it's underlined, and that's going to be information on a link to the report card homepage, which provides additional information about report cards and also lets you see examples of report cards in prior school years. So you can kind of see different examples of what's on them. And speaking of examples, you will see on the left side of the screen, you will see the front page for a report card, and you can kind of get a little bit of a sense, high level, of the different areas involved, although you might not be able to see it the best, so I apologize for that. But ultimately, what you're going to see is the following information. High level, you're going to see an overall score and rating. And how that's developed is each school receives an overall score from 0 to 100. And this score is calculated by combining the weighted average of the priority area scores. So you'll see the 4 priority areas in green below. So you're going to see the weighted average of the priority area scores combined to calculate the overall score. And then that overall score is going to place a school in one of 5 rating categories. So you'll see that information, the overall score and rating. You'll also see information about your school and information about the student groups in your school. There's also an opportunity to have an optional narrative statement from your school. And then there'll be more information about those 4 priority areas. And like I said, the 4 priority areas combined, with the weighted average to make up that overall score. So I'm going to talk just a little bit about each priority area so you get a better sense of the different areas that combine to make up your overall score. So let's start with achievement. So achievement summarizes how your school students performed on state assessments. And then you have the second priority area of growth, which measures year-to-year student progress on statewide assessments using a value-added model. Then you have target group outcomes, the third priority area, which looks at outcomes for students with the lowest test scores in your school. And then the last priority area is going to be on track to graduation. And this priority area indicates how successfully students are progressing towards completing their K through 12 education. So again, I'll just reiterate a lot of information about report cards, but you can kind of use the link and go to the report card homepage, find additional details. And I will also include my contact information on our last slide, so you can reach out to me with questions as well. Can we go to the next slide, Carrie? Thank you. All right, so we talked before about the report card for choice students in your school. So that's going to be a report card you'll receive. It's a required report card, but there's an optional, you can opt in to receive an additional report card, and that would be on all of your students in the school, so your choice students and all students in your school. And again, it's an option. If you do opt in, you have to have WISE IDs for all students, WISE data submissions, and you have to test all students to provide that data for the report card. And again, there is going to be a data requirement in terms of when you would get a scored report card, the 2 consecutive years of data for all students in the school that we talked about before. And then our next slide, please, Carrie. Thank you. All right, so I did say we would talk about the report card timelines again, because I know that's kind of an important piece of information and we did go over it fast. So you'll see on the right side of the slide, sorry, mouthful there, that you as schools new to the choice program in 2023-24, you'll receive your first report card in the fall of 2024. And like we talked about previously, it will not be rated because we only have 1 year of data. But then you'll have the opportunity for your first scored report card in the fall of 2025. So now if we look at the left side of the slide, we'll see a little bit more about how the release process for report cards works. So we have a secure release in October, and that's an opportunity for you to review the data and ask questions. And if there are any needed data corrections, have those conversations with us before the report card is more broadly released to the public in November. So there's 2 separate releases, and that secure release provides opportunity to review your data. Next slide. And again, a lot of information quick, I know. So I wanted to make sure I provided my name again as Katie Schumacher. So definitely feel free. You'll have my email address in the link below. Please reach out with any specific questions you may have after this presentation, or even as fall of 2024 gets closer and you start to have more and more questions, definitely reach out. There's also email contacts for our Director of Accountability and Assistant Director of Accountability as well. With that being said, are there any immediate questions anyone has that I can do my best to answer?
I do see in the chat that Jane is
yeah.
asking for the opt-out, well, the all student report card opt-in, opt-out form. Ryan, if you could throw that in the chat for our choice schools, that is a form that's due today.
Thanks, Carrie. Don't see anything else. And like I said, I know it's a lot of information, you know, so definitely feel free to reach out over email. And if you have any specific questions, happy to discuss further.
Thank you, Katie, for all of this great information on the school report card.
Hey, Carrie, I put the form in the chat. The link is there and the form can be found in that link. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to send another chat and I can work with you too.
And you just heard from our parental education options team, Ryan Franz. He may be a familiar voice already. He is working with you on all of those choice requirements. And that form that he threw in the chat is one of them. So again, ask questions if you have them. He's here to support you as well. All right. Next piece, I'm going to quickly, our food and nutrition service team staff member isn't in attendance today, so I'm going to quickly cover this slide. These are all of the USDA child nutrition programs that DPI helps service and facilitate. So we have our National School Lunch Program, which we talked about in connection to the economic status reporting. We have our school breakfast program, after school snack program, child and adult care food program, summer food service program, and special milk program. These programs may be available if you're interested at your school. If this is something that you would want more information on, please use these links. Here's a link to join the school meal programs or the CACFP, the Child and Adult Care Food Program, the link to join there. So if that's something that you'd want to look into, please use those resources. Again, I'm going to be sending the slide deck for your reference. The next colleague that we're going to hear from is Andrea Donegan from the Student Services Prevention and Wellness team.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Glad to meet with you today. It looks like you have had a full day of information, and that will not stop me from giving you some more. My name is Andrea Donegan. I am the school counseling consultant on our Student Services Prevention and Wellness team. So just wanted to share with you more content versus technical details. So hopefully this will help your brain just be able to relax for a hot second anyway. So some of the resources, one of the things I always say about coming to DPI after being a school counselor for 26 years in the field is, what are the regrets? One, obviously the students, two, the staff, and three, not knowing all of the amazing opportunities, resources, content that DPI provides. So if this is your work, great. If it's not, please be aware of it and share it out with those people who you do work with in your schools. So on our team, some of the information that we provide is all, listed here. Not all of it, some of it. But we have resources, content, training around attendancy and truancy, confidentiality and pupil records that comes up, behavior and discipline, anti-human trafficking, social emotional learning, comprehensive school mental health, all of these things. And there are a ton of resources. So I did link at the bottom of this page, our webpage that will take you to all of those resources so you have them at your fingertips. One little hint and tip about that is if you go to the DPI webpage, just type in, DPI, and it'll come up. There'll be a search engine, and it's pretty intuitive. And sometimes that's your best way of accessing the most current and recent information. I made the mistake of just going in and putting like a Google search that said DPI, whatever, suicide prevention. But it also then brings up everything that's cached, which may not be the most recent information. So that is your best bet as you're looking for information that's current and relevant. All right, so one of the things that we have and we're spending a lot of time on is our Wisconsin School Mental Health Framework. I'm not going to go into these details. Obviously, that would be a whole nother day training, but I wanted to put this on your radar because we are looking at everything falling within this mental health framework. So looking at what are those mental health supports, collaboration, needs assessments and resources, a referral pathway, sustainability and data. So it's really that systems work where everything is housed under that, including suicide prevention and trauma sensitive schools and social emotional learning. So if this isn't something that you're aware of, just keep an eye open for opportunities to learn more about it so that we can really put together a system that supports our students and all of our students. One thing I'm just going to highlight here to check out is our bullying prevention toolkit, which is something new that has just been created. It's very comprehensive, as you can see with the bullet items listed here. Providing what is a definition, for those of you who are working in this area and working with students, there's sometimes some confusion about what is a peer conflict versus what is, aggressiveness versus what is true bullying. So it really lays out that very nicely. And again, kind of walks you through the whole system of what you can do in your school setting to put into place a preventive approach that really helps on that back end of addressing these concerns before they become a big issue. Attendance and mental health, again, a major struggle, especially post-pandemic, is attendance, especially as those mental health struggles and challenges crop up. So there are some resources that have just been newly developed to provide some best practices and guidance. Obviously, schools get to decide how they want to handle it, but we try to create some resources that help you see what are some things that are happening in the field that are best practice that might give you some information to help direct the work that you're doing. Suicide prevention, this is an area, obviously, our youth risk behavior survey data is really showing concerns with mental health challenges, feelings of belongingness, suicidality. So we're creating a lot of resources around that are available to all schools, including choice schools. So just a quick highlight, we do have peer-to-peer suicide prevention grants at DPI that are for high schools up to $1,000. and choice schools are allowed to request those funds. The application is super simple. I'm on that team and the lead, so I try to make it really manageable. And then we're partnering with Mental Health America, who is supplementing that with up to $5,000 peer-to-peer suicide prevention grants. And that can be elementary through high school and allows you to look at how to create programming so that your students, who are the first people to hear about another student's suicidality, knows where to turn, how to respond, how to connect them to a caring adult. So those will be coming out in the fall. So keep your eyes open for those if that's an area that you are supporting or someone in your school is supporting. We are creating, like I said, a ton of resources. So coming soon, we're going to have additional modules, including our gatekeeper training, which is great for any new staff or for a refresher or for your paraprofessionals, because it's really intended for all staff to be able to know how to support students should they share anything concerning. And then health curriculum that will be rolled out this fall. So we have a 3rd through 5th, a 6th through 8th, and a 9th through 12th curriculum that will be shared on our website that anyone can use to support that work. Our 21st Century Community Learning Center grants, I'm an imposter here. This work is done on my team, but I'm not real connected to it. But here's some information. It's really that out of school time services that is available to choice schools to apply for. Those grants will be opening in October, typically closing in January. So if that's an area you want to pursue, check out this website. It has a lot of information, a short video that tells you a little bit more about, and can be a great support to our students and our parents as well, looking for that after school support when they're still working. And then stay connected to DPI. We have some great email lists. Sometimes we call them listservs, but that's more of a proprietary name. So if that resonates with you, that's kind of what this is about. You can sign up. Of course, I put school counseling first, but there's a school nurse, school psych, school social work, social emotional learning, suicide prevention, and a whole list of them, which is linked on that first subscribe to DPI email list and discussion groups. It allows you to sign up, and then you get emails regarding content that's been created, trainings that are available, resources out there, not just from DPI, but from our partners, and then even kind of externally. Some of those communications are two-way, where you can drop in a question. Others of them are just one way, where information is pushed out to you, but definitely just tons and tons of great research. And then some new additions to our student services resources. There's a school-based mental health professionals in Wisconsin resource document. So if you're looking at how is a school social work different than a school counselor, different than a school psych, this will give you some information. If you have any professionals who are working, without a DPI license, who are really new to the field, there's some best practice considerations to really support them, especially if they're on, like you may not have that 1-year license with stipulations, but our public school counterparts do. And this just really helps to know like what they should have to give them that extra support. And then we do have some orientations for new pupil service staff. I do a school counselor orientation, which is a part of our Wisconsin School Counseling Association pre-conference, as well as a new school social work resource sharing sessions, and then a virtual community of practice for early career school psychologists. The latter of those two are free services. My orientation goes along with the WISCA pre-conference cost that's associated with that. Any questions, comments, feedback? I'm hoping I caught you up a little bit and was able to quickly give you some great information. But if you have any questions about this, please feel free to jump on now. Otherwise, please reach out to me and I will help direct you however I can.
This was some great information, Andrea. Thank you.
You bet.
Let's see if we have any questions in the chat at this time. It says the links on slide decks are not working. Well, Dr. Easley, they are not going to work right now via the Teams, but I'm going to be sending you the slide deck, and then you can access the links through the slide deck that will be coming to your email inbox after today's training. Great feedback.
Great. And Carrie, if you find that, they aren't working, they were when I checked them yesterday, but we know how that goes. Technology is not always my friend. Let me know and I'll update that for you before you send it out to everyone. Thanks for letting us
Andrea.
know.
Yeah,
right.
we appreciate
luck,
you
everybody.
coming on. Thank you.
Yep. You bet.
All right, up next, we are going to learn about ESSA equitable participation title services for private school students. So we are excited to hear from another DPI colleague today.
Hi, Carrie. Hi, everyone. Disclaimer, I do have quite a few slides, but I will not be going over everything. I know that these slides are often made available, so I wanted to make sure to provide so that these slides could be resources when they were shared out with you. So I will be sure not to go too far into the weeds, or Carrie, please give me a bit of a nudge if that does happen, because it certainly can happen when I get talking on this topic. Just wanting to introduce you to the world of ESEA equitable participation. And this is ultimately the idea of ESEA title services for private school students. My name's Brielle Glatzel. I'm a federal fiscal consultant on the Title I team, which of course is one of those title services that private schools are eligible to receive services under. And so under ESEA, there is a requirement that public school districts must consult with the private schools located within their boundaries to give those private schools the opportunity to receive equitable services for their eligible children, the teachers, and families around title services. And in particular, what we refer to as the Big Four titles, so Title I, II, III, and IV. This consultation must be timely and meaningful, and it must result in agreement between the private school and LEA on how to best provide equitable services that are also effective in meeting the needs of the students. And it must be ongoing, which basically infers that there needs to be ongoing consultation throughout the year or ongoing communication between LEA and private school representatives. And so this is basically that idea that if you are interested in participating, there's always going to be that sort of conversation happening. And so as part of that consultation, that outreach that is happening and being initiated by the LEA, there are specific topics that need to be covered. First and foremost, the discussion around what those 4 title grants are and how they can be used to support the private school students, but then also the idea of what sort of data has to be collected from the private school to ensure participation, but also to make sure that the funds are being used to best support the students. So the idea of collecting things around, assessment data, enrollment data, how are students' needs going to be identified? So of course, that's going to go back to assessment data, the size and scope of equitable services. So looking at how much funding is going to be available. And because of the amount of funding available, what are we really looking at realistically for what type of services can be provided and how much services can be provided? Because unfortunately, there is a direct relation to what type of services and how much services can be provided based off of the amount of funds. How funding is going to work through a pooling, is our funds going to be available by school, or are you potentially, do you have a relationship with another school that's within the district? And we'll be looking at pooling your funds together. And one that's really important are how are services going to be provided? That means how, when, where, and by whom. There's always that need to evaluate the effectiveness of services, and that's part of that idea of ongoing communication and collaboration also. So if services and services aren't working to meet the needs of your students, your teachers, your families, We want to make sure that there's a process in place to be able to first off identify that potentially the services aren't meeting those needs, but then also being able to have a process to adjust those services. The idea of how could those 4 title grant funds be used in coordination, so they're not just silos of funding, but how could they be used together to really lean in and support the students in the private school. And then the idea of public control of funds. And so this is one that private schools often struggle with, and some of our LEAs in the state even struggle with. And this is the idea of, even as a private school, if you say you want to participate, knowing that you will have access to these services that can be made available through title funds, it's the idea of knowing that you as the private school will not ever directly receive the title funds. So this means the LEA who you would work with maintains all rights to those funds. So they are the ones who would purchase any items on your behalf, would enter into any sort of contract for services. The LEA or the district ultimately still maintains the right to all of those funds. And that's what that public control of funds means. So that's something that, needs to be a conversation during that consultation too. So this is just a nice, friendly little slide that offers a really good summary of the 4 title grants and their intent and purpose, especially with that idea of how could these funds be coordinated so that they're not treated as silos, as I had indicated just briefly. And so we want to look at the idea of, Title I is really meant to support students with that greatest academic need, in particular through instructional services, through professional development for educators, and for family engagement. Title II is supporting effective instruction through professional development for the teachers and staff at the private school, but also even for leadership in the private school and for principals. Title III is meant to support English learners and immigrant students and really around instructional services for English language instruction. There's the opportunity to use the funds for family and community engagement, and professional development for the private school employees. Title IV is definitely more broad and flexible, but there are 3 key areas that support the idea of academic enrichment and student support. And so those 3 areas would be well-rounded education, healthy and safe environment, and then effective use of technology. So this is always I always find this slide helpful because it's a really nice summary of what the intent and purpose is, and kind of an entry-level idea of kind of allowable costs under those 4 titles. So when it comes to participating, there are going to be components that are required for a private school to participate. So when you meet with an LEA, you hold consultation, and ultimately, if you decide you do want to receive some services to benefit your students, your teachers, and your families, you would indicate, yes, we want to participate under this title or maybe all of the titles. It's not inclusive to where you have to participate under all or none. You can certainly determine that you're going to just participate under Title I or, participate under Title I and Title IV. So private schools have that ability to, to kind of choose your adventure, so to speak. But when it comes to participating, sorry, Carrie, when it comes to participating, there are going to be factors that the private school needs to basically, not factors, but there are elements of active participation that the private school needs to meet. And one of that is data, providing data. And one that is very important is the idea of enrollment data, because this supports the calculation of the proportional share. So the enrollment data is what helps determine how much funding is going to be available to support the private school. And for Title II and Title IV, this would include all of the students within the private school, regardless of where a student resides. When it comes to Title I, if your private school is looking to participate under Title I, we also need enrollment data around where the student's address and also low income data. And so when it comes to collecting that or providing that information to your LEA, we always talk about at this point in time, or when you're first having this enrollment data conversation, you certainly do not need to include student names. You could use something like student A or student 1. You can use a different sort of identifier so that you are not necessarily giving PII at this point in time, because when you're simply providing enrollment data and you're not necessarily going down to the level of saying, oh, this specific student is going to receive services, you do not need to necessarily share student names with the LEA. But if you do want to participate under Title I, you would need to be able to provide student addresses, because an element of Title I is being able to identify whether or not a student actually resides within the district. So that's specific to Title I. You can go to the next slide, Carrie. And then another element for Title I, and I had alluded to it a little bit, is the idea of low income data. So this is also just for Title I purposes, because Title I, part of the proportional calculation in Title I is also driven on this idea of poverty data, not only for the private school students, but also for public school students. So it is consistent between both public and private. So the same sort of data is also being collected and included within the proportional calculation for the public side as well. So again, if your private school determines that you want to participate in Title I, low income data would be part of the required enrollment data, so to speak, that would need to be provided. And that would be a conversation that would need to be included as part of that consultation discussion with your LEA. So this just has some available poverty measures, but ultimately your LEA and you would need to make that determination on how you're going to provide poverty data to your district. And just know also that it needs to be a collaborative process, but at the end of the day, the LEA and not you as the private school should be responsible for identifying individual students as low income for the purposes of the application. And another factor of data that needs to be a part of, again, your role as an active participant would be data that can support a needs assessment. So any of the 4 titles that you would participate on, whether it's 1, 2, 3, or 4, directly need to be associated with the needs of your students, your teachers, and your families. And so a needs assessment is just a vital part of participating in ESEA equitable services. One thing that we always have conversations with our districts about, and certainly want to make sure that is also included in conversations with private schools, is this idea of a private school maybe not always having the exact same type of data available as the district, but wanting to focus on the types of data that are going to be available. So of course it can include those types of data that are going to be, available within the district. So scores on standardized tests. So thinking of the forward exam, Iowa Star Pals, and then those more standard classroom assessments. So formative and formative and summative, so iReady maps, but then also in cases where that data is not available, portfolio of student work, writing samples, teacher recommendations, certainly wanting to raise up the importance of teacher recommendations and individuals from the private school, as you are the ones who know your students best. And of course, input from families and report card grades. So being able to have the private school and the district have a comprehensive needs assessment process to determine which students, or to determine the area of need. Title I, as I alluded to earlier, is really meant to dig in and support students in their areas of greatest need. Direct services always need to be the priority use for Title I. So it's meant to be things like interventions, tutoring, one-on-one support. And it can go for areas of core subjects. So reading and math are what we hear most often, but things such as, or even other subjects like science and social studies are also allowable, as well as areas for like behavioral health and social emotional health. So those are obviously not subjects, but those are areas that could impede a student's academic success. Other services for Title I that could be allowable are professional development to support Title I student needs and family engagement activities. But ultimately, when we start looking at things like materials or supplies or equipment, if there's no direct Title I services, so direct instruction being provided to students, material, supplies, or equipment are not going to be considered an allowable use of the funds. And this is just a continuation of that conversation. So you can go ahead and go to the next slide. Title II is meant to support the greatest needs of students in the core subjects. And like Title I, also in the other areas that may impede a student's academic achievement. But this is more so through high quality professional development being provided to private school teachers and staff. And this could include paraprofessionals, as well as private school principals and other school leaders. So the idea and purpose of Title II is to support the needs of students through professional learning opportunities for the private school staff. And so there is quite a distinction between how Title II funds can be used. So if you go, yep, perfect, thanks. So you see how here the idea of professional development must improve, content knowledge or classroom practice, or it must address student behavior in the classroom and identify early interventions. So you can see the connection to Title I, or the intent and purpose of Title I and those services, but how it's then meant to be more so that professional learning opportunity for the private school staff. And so allowed costs would be conference registration, transportation, lodging, stipends to your staff who might be working beyond their contracted time. And then if there's any particular books or instructional resources that connect back to that professional development. Title III, again, is meant to support English learners in core subjects, as well as any of those other areas that might impede their academic achievement. This is another title that does really lean in on the idea of the funds going to support direct instruction, but does allow for professional development and family engagement. If you want to go to the next slide. This is just, again, indicators of allowed costs. So teachers and paraprofessionals supporting those EL learners, and then supplies and instructional materials to support those EL learners and family engagement activities. So again, that disclaimer for direct instructional supports. Title IV, as I mentioned earlier, is more broad and flexible. It's supplemental services that address one or more of priorities within the private school. So well-rounded educational opportunities, safe and healthy students, effective use of technologies. Disclaimer that I should give is this idea, especially around Title IV, because it is a lot broader, but there is that term supplemental. The intent and purpose of all of the 4 titles is not meant to simply support the general curriculum or general education at the private school. It's always meant to provide opportunities above and beyond what is available to the private school students, especially again for Title IV, that's available just as is part of the private school's general curriculum. So allowed costs under Title IV includes staff and professional development to support the greatest academic needs, mental health counselors. So that's a different area that really comes up under Title IV. There's actually quite a bit of emphasis around Title IV in that area. And then supplies and instructional materials to support the greatest academic needs in the private school. Roles and responsibilities, I've kind of been trying to allude to this throughout, of this idea of if you want to participate as a private school and receive ESEA equitable services, that it does mean that you need to be an active participant. And part of that is being responsive to the LEA's request to consult, also providing necessary data, whether it's enrollment, the needs assessment, being an active participant through that consultation of, coming to the table and working in collaboration to identify the greatest areas of needs, and the idea of being, engaging in ongoing communications with your district. So we do have a document and it's linked here. So when you do get those slides, you should be able to access that guidance document. That does go ahead and outline on one side, it has the roles and responsibilities of the LEA, and then it has the roles and responsibilities of the private school. And so it tries to outline throughout like consultation, and then throughout the year, like implementation of services, evaluation of services. It tries to kind of break it down throughout the phases of the year of these are the responsibilities of the LEA, these are the responsibilities of the private school, and to help give some context as to what, your expectations are and what you can also expect of your district, right? Because that's important too. You can go ahead, Carrie. The other thing to note is there is the ESSA Ombudsman. ESEA requires that the SEA, which would be DPI, that we contract with an individual to serve as the ESSA Ombudsman. Wisconsin's ESSA Ombudsman is Abigail Pavella. She goes by Abby. She is technically an employee of WCRIS. So some of you may actually be members of WCRIS. I am not going to try to see, I will try to Google. But ultimately, let's see if I can get it really quickly. I should have come prepared. But ultimately, the ESSA Ombudsman she helps monitor and enforce equitable participation in private schools, particularly under ESEA. She provides technical assistance. I have it up too. It's the Wisconsin Council of Religious and Independent Schools. Yeah. So she supports, yeah. Oh, thank you. Yeah. So, so that is a separate agency, or not agency, but they are a nonprofit that specifically supports independent private schools in the state. And so she works, like I said, she works for them, and she is on contract with DPI in her role as the ESSA Ombudsman. And so she is there to support private schools. She is there to support LEA. She's there to be a neutral third party. She's also there, she's there to support if there are disagreements, but she's also there to just provide technical assistance as needed. You can always reach out with her or reach out to her. Her contact information is provided below. You can also always reach out to me. Or, of course, there's always your LEA who is hopefully you have a collaborative partnership with your LEA and can reach out to them. But in the case where you do potentially have conflict, and or maybe your LEA and you are both, struggling to determine the correct way to proceed, I would always say starting with the ESSA Ombudsman is always a great way to get the ball moving forward. I think that might actually be my last slide. Yeah, that is.
That is your last slide.
Yeah, I tried to go fast. I don't know if I did 15 minutes.
You did great. You did great, Brielle, and we know so much more about all the amazing title services available here at DPI. Any questions for Brielle about our title programming and services before we hear from our next DPI colleague, PEO's Ryan Franz, about the Special Needs Scholarship Program? Thank you, Brielle.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Whenever we have collaboration between our departments, it's always really incredible. And our customer service team heavily collaborates with our parental education options team. So Ryan and I are in frequent communication to support you. Oftentimes we'll be sharing, emails back and forth to get clarification on any matters. So it's really important that we have that consistent communication. Sometimes schools will email me choice specific questions, not a problem. I always forward it to the necessary contacts and vice versa. So we're very collaborative, and we're hoping to meet all of your needs. And it's okay if you send a question to the wrong place, because we'll make sure that we get it there. Ryan, do you have a moment to discuss the special needs scholarship program? That is okay. I'm going to read the slide. The special needs scholarship program allows a student with a disability who meets certain eligibility requirements to receive a state-funded scholarship to attend a participating private school. So some of you may already be in SNSP. We do not want SNSP students reported to WISE data unless you are an opt-in school reporting all of your enrollments. That's the only way that we want those students reported. This is offered through the Parental Education Options team. The SNSP school registration for the current school year is complete. And in early 2024, we will have registration materials for the upcoming 24-25 school year. So in the slide deck, you will have the webpage linked, and then there's also a direct email address for any questions you may have. If you're currently participating, send questions there, or if you're interested in participating, or you can absolutely give them a call. So what I want to do quickly is I want to review our learning targets before we end our call today. And we have a really big slide deck, so I'm going to go through some of our learning targets here so you can feel confident on what is next. If you work like me, I need a checklist. So we're going to just use our meeting agenda today. And again, don't think that if you don't attend to this matter now that the information's all going to go away. I'm going to follow up with an email with some action items and resources. But we want you to use the WISE Secure application to assign your colleagues access to the WISE Secure reporting applications. We want you to go into School Directory and update the physical school address, the contact information, and the grade levels. PI 1207's on the back burner until September 18th. We want you to go into the EdFi credential application and establish a key and secret with your SIS vendor. Email your SIS vendor. Do we input the key and secret, or does the SIS vendor do that on the back end? After you have the key and secret established, or even at any time, it doesn't matter, use the WISE ID tool. Now, if you don't have your key and secret established, the identity tool built in your SIS isn't going to work. So until you have that key and secret entered, you won't be able to use the WISE ID tool built into your SIS. However, it is a separate application, and I have to-dos that you must complete today. Log into the WISE ID application, complete the contact information, and sign up for the agency notifications. You want an email letting you know that you've got some issues to attend to in WISE ID. You don't want it to just sit there until you don't have time. We know that's how it works in education. Your time is very valuable and very limited, and you need your attention span going to your students, your staff, and your school community. You don't need to be saying, oh yeah, I forgot to log into WISE ID. So sign up for those agency notifications, please, and update that contact information. If necessary, use the spreadsheet tool to upload your students into WISE ID. If you need me to hold your hand through that process, I'm happy to do that. Wise Admin, if you are a choice administrator, please log into Wise Admin, complete the collection agreements, and after setup is complete, review that all of the applications have contacts entered. Certainly follow up with any of those services and programming that we heard about, and get your enrollment paperwork ready. So we talked about a few of those maybe new pieces of data collection as a choice school. So one of those pieces, well, this isn't necessarily police, but flag your choice students in your SIS. This is a to-do. We're going to have you include in your enrollment paperwork some of those potentially new pieces of data, like the race ethnicity. Be sure you're collecting that. You have to have it to attain a WISE ID. If you want resources on how to have these conversations, certainly reach out to us. We're happy to help. Another piece of data that may be new to you, economically disadvantaged status, that alternate household income form. Use that in your enrollment paperwork if you are not participating in the National School Lunch Program or Community Eligibility Provision. Also, our home language survey to identify any students who are English learners. Potentially access services and resources from the public district, but most definitely to alert your classroom educator so that they can be prepared and experience success with our English learners. Giving that scaffolded instruction, right? Getting the tools in the toolkit for our teachers. We are on their team and we want to help you with that. So those are a few pieces in the enrollment paperwork that we want you to consider that you may not have already collected. We have also many optional pieces like the digital equity collection, the ancestry ethnic origins. Where's the digital equity? There it is. And the tribal affiliation. Okay. I am going to pause for questions and I'm going to leave my contact information up. Call me, email me. I am your main source of contact. Oops, I forgot to take down the Google Currents community. They deactivated that. Don't join the Google Currents community. Again, I am your main source of contact with the WISE data setup. So please feel free to reach out as you're working. This is not necessarily intuitive. So please do not find yourself full of cortisol, all stressed out and upset at the process or at your computer. Certainly reach out to me so that I can help you easily resolve these things. I'm coming from education, so I'm very empathetic. I know that the fall is a very busy time of year, and I want your focus to be on your staff and on your students and families. Okay, so that's why we facilitated this training so that you could get the clicks completed and feel supported and have everything ready to go for the beginning of the school year. So again, throw your questions in the chat if you have any. Otherwise, I will be scheduling one-on-one calls with you after the third Friday of September so that we're sure your school's data is accurate for the December snapshot. Okay, I may be reaching out earlier if we don't see data flowing. We want data flowing for the first day of school, ideally. So that's why we're getting all these clicks completed. And I'm going to meet with you to show you how to review the accuracy of your data, how to use the tools within WISE data. It's just kind of digestible pieces, step by step. Okay, we're not throwing everything at you at once. We understand that this is a learning curve, and we're on your team. So with that, I will leave the chat open, but I just want to conclude in saying how much I appreciate not only your time and attendance today, because I know time is everyone's greatest asset, right? But also what you're doing. We appreciate what you're doing at the schools. We know how much this work can be in every capacity, personally and professionally. So thank you for everything that you're doing for our schools and our communities. It's an honor and a privilege to be working with you today and throughout the school year. And we look forward to working with you as the 23-24 school year begins. Dan has a question about the key and secret. Dan, I'm happy to help you. Okay, so where can I find the WISE Data School ID and WISE Data LEA? Good question, Dan. We can get that for you here. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen really quick so I can do some clicking. And Dan, can you type in your school? I just want to verify that I'm working with the right school before I go do anything. St. John's Wauwatosa, that's what I thought. Super. Let me help you with that. So we need the school ID, probably the agency key, huh? Wauwatosa. All right, so just a quick moment as I pull that. Oops, it was right in front of me and then I clicked. Oh, Carrie. Here we go. Wauwatosa. All right, Dan, I am going to send that information to you in a separate email. Right now, so you have that. I just got to figure out the columns really quick. All right, Dan. That is in an email to you now. And now you have the necessary details. You bet. Feel free to throw in any other questions. I'll leave this chat open here.
Hi, Carrie, are you still there?
Hello, Dr. Easley. Yes, I am.
Hi, I had a quick question. I'm sorry, I clicked
Sure.
out and I was trying to get back in. So when I was in, I think Wise Data, oh geez, admin portal,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a area where it's saying agencies, and it's asking, it's listing all the public agencies. Am I supposed to pick like Milwaukee Public Schools or no? We're showing up at the top as a private school, but I didn't know if I was supposed to pick that agency as the LEA. You know, do you know where I'm talking about? Let me,
If you're in Wise Admin,
I believe I was in the Wise admin portal. Let me log back in here.
use the private school option. Like use your school specifically.
Okay. I think that answers my question. I'm going.
Okay.
I'm going in, and it was left blank. Okay. Choose. It was where the agencies was listed. Where would that be at? Where would that be?
What tool would have the agencies? Let's see.
Oh, I have it. Contact. I'm in the Wise admin portal, and I think
you are.
Yep, I'm here. So the first agency contacts, my school is there. I am there. Agency
Perfect.
contacts Wise ID. Oh, agency contacts Wise staff.
Oh, so you do not collect staff data, so ignore that.
Okay.
Good question.
And then the next one underneath there is just agencies, and it says drag a column header and drop it here to group by that column.
Yeah, so if you, for whatever reason, were collaborating with a number of agencies, so basically this is a tool built for superintendents. So as you can imagine, MPS, Milwaukee Public Schools, has many schools within the district. So they could drag and drop all the schools to monitor all these pieces of like agency contacts and collection agreements, where you don't necessarily have to use it in this capacity.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, great questions. Thank you for asking.
Yeah, I'm just nervous that I absolutely missed a click somewhere.
Don't worry.
I wish it was like a click checklist.
I know, it's a lot. It is a lot, but it sounds like you're pretty engaged and you're staying on top of things with the Wise data piece. We have a little bit of time. Ideally, we have data flowing by the first day of school. If you don't, I'm going to be checking things and like reaching out to verify. So I'm definitely here to support and try to help troubleshoot. Focus on those August 1 requirements today for the choice program. And then after today, you can put those requirements aside and get anything Wise data completed before the school year starts.
Okay, I think I'm done with all my August 1.
Good for you.
August 1.
Like a marathon. You're almost there.
It's done by Friday.
All right.
On August 15th today. I have a meeting with my external auditor so we can get this authorization form signed.
Lots on your plate.
Yeah, my fear is missing something. Like, I just want to make sure that I'm missing
I know.
things. And I have a system like when the deadlines come in and the bulletins come in, I put it on my calendar, try to put it on my calendar a week in advance. But I'm just like, I hope I don't miss something putting it on my calendar.
Very understandable.
But I get a lot of reminders. That's helpful. Thank you guys so much for always sending out. I mean, you guys are very good with sending out information and reminders. So thank you all so much for everything you've been doing to help with this process. We're super excited. We're super blessed, but it's an ordeal.
It is. It's a lot of work getting set up, but hopefully, you know, next year you'll be in a rhythm and you'll kind of understand what you need to do.
Yes. All right. Thank you so much.
Thanks for attending. Absolutely. I'm going to leave the chat open for about 5 more minutes to see if we get any further questions. Thank you again for your collaboration and attendance today.